Hello and welcome to the Tifo Football Podcast. I'm Michael Bailey. Steve Hankles is trying to tell me I've had too much caffeine in this episode, which again I find incredibly rude. I say again because obviously we've recorded the whole podcast and I've got to not say again because that hasn't happened yet. But there you go. Apparently you will soon find out. Through this wonderful podcast, I was joined by, because they're here, Joe Bull.
No.
And JJ Jon Mackenzie.
Yo.
Not that. Michael's coming hot today. So
Or Rich.
Yeah, he's running rich.
look forward to
You're running a bit
this.
rich,
I'm
aren't you?
running very rich.
Yeah.
The fallout is going to be horrendous, but none of you will see it. It'll happen on a train back to Norwich.
Is that right?
Could be horrible. We didn't just talk about that or that. We spoke about loads of things. They were Arsenal's relentless march to the Premier League title and the lovely, lovely Leo Trossard.
Oh, Leo now.
I've embellished it.
Leandro.
But again,
His
I've
name
done
is
that.
Leo and he dances on the sand.
I've done that, retrospectively to the podcast that hasn't happened yet. So I don't. It's fine. The relegation battle. Fulham have had a good season. That's good. Maybe it's going to start to unravel. Maybe not. Maybe they'll qualify for Europe. Who's to say? Jadon Sancho as a number 10 for Manchester United, which was a storming success. Or was it? Maybe it was. Nominative determinism. And how easy it is to say. Can't even make my own jokes. How hard it is to talk backwards. We should have written that backwards, Steve. One for next time. And an in-depth discussion of the Europa League and Champions League. Really.
I thought we really
in-depth.
hit our heights in those two sections.
And just generally some better. Steve is currently trying to write that previous sentence backwards. It's abusing to watch, but he seems to have now stopped. That's a shame. If you want to hear actual in-depth, we went through those competitions in real depth, but if you want even more real in-depth analysis of major European competitions, you should read The Athletic. And you can do that with a three dial of 30 days of trials for all of the 30 days. At what point do we have to re-record it? I'm just going to keep going. I think we'll be fine. Keep going, says Steve. It's fine. He's still typing that backwards. You are. Remarkable. 30-day three dial for the... Oh, my gosh.
It's
a 30-day
it's just
free. A 30-day free trial.
What is happening?
I'm not a 30-day free trial at The Athletic.
Three dial.
Where you can read the pieces I write. Backwards. Yeah. Because I can write better than I can talk.
Is it true that you write your pieces backwards and then translate them
Steve translates it for me.
It's
great, really. It's really useful. What have you read on The Athletic recently that made sense?
I read a piece that I referenced in the podcast that...
Excellent.
It's feature...
Don't spoiler alert.
Well, it's fine. All about how the European football might change and where it might go and what might happen to it. It's an interesting piece. Loads of stuff to learn. Loads to learn. What else did I read? I read some stuff today. Enjoyed it all. What the hell did I read?
It doesn't matter. Well, he's read it. JJ read it. That was a good thing.
Weinstein's column.
I enjoyed a really good match report of the game between Lowestoft Town and AFC Filed.
They weren't
as they are now called.
They weren't called that then.
What were they called?
I thought you might ask me that. Kirkham and Wesham.
Oh wow! Is that where is that?
That is near Blackpool.
Oh, okay. So that's a long.
Just wait until you find out what about that. Anyway, 30-day.
I just thought it would be funny, right? This is a relevant...
That's a high bar. It's got to be funny now.
Well, necessarily not. You know how these footballers all wear the Under
Armour.
Under Armour, yeah. So it's it's like a morph suit, but not, right? Why don't they do it so then draw fake abs on the thing so they're all really strong? They do the outlines.
And then pull their shirt when they score. And just hench.
Yeah, they have
just really comedy ones.
Abs.
You should just draw them on with mascara. You can do that, can't you?
No, it's like a marker pen even would be good. You know how in It's Always Sunny and
get
the Birds
a
of War.
yellow card for
because then you would just have the body.
I mean, you could do that on the podcast.
I've got this because I've got
Imagine if JJ pulled up. Imagine if JJ pulled up.
Oh wow!
Shirt
It's like a morph suit.
Exactly. So there's Ben Chilwell is a picture of that in one of the Athletic articles. So then he just drew the abs on. That'd be great.
I mean, we got the memo of Jumper.
I dressed up like you.
Or encourage you to encourage me.
Yeah.
The man management.
No. Oh. It's more to hype you up.
Oh, I liked it.
Yeah.
John, you didn't wear a...
I didn't, but I have drawn abs and pecs. on my very chest.
Can we see it?
John draws
maybe-
abs
maybe
on his bare chest. He doesn't even wear Under Armour. He just does it all the time.
Maybe later. Save it for the outtakes. Remember I was talking about a 30-day free trial to The Athletic? Yeah, of course you do. You can get that at theathletic.com/Tifo. That is theathletic.com/Tifo. Oh, what have you written backwards there, Steve? My lord. Et look in sniding much wide as a good which is probably cool hands and warm embrace, I would imagine.
But you could say this, and then if you got it right, because Steve could reverse it.
They could just edit it.
And it would sound, you see, it sounds like what the thing is.
Possibly. And that cool hands and warm embrace is apparently of Coronation Street's Michael Bailey. So there you go. Here's the podcast. Yeah.
It looks na mra economy.
Yeah, but the problem is that that's not backwards, is it? If we
the-
get it right
it's-
backwards, it's going to say
Embrace warm and hands cool. This has worked. Let's begin with Fulham 0, 3 Arsenal. Arsenal's march towards the Premier League title continues unabated, and thanks to Leo Trossard, who I'm now just calling Leo. And he is a great signing in Arsenal's march towards the Premier League title, which is definitely happening, isn't it, JJ?
Yes. I'd like to call him Leo now as well.
Yes.
Leo the Lion.
Rawr. He is roaring. He is a roaring success.
Yes. Did you know that he is, check this stat out. Oh, no, wait, I've got rid of it. He is the first player in history to get a hat-trick of assists in the first half of a Premier League game on a Sunday.
away game.
Away game.
Key detail.
You'll never sing that?
No.
The first player to make a hat-trick assist in the first half of any away game.
Remarkable. Underlines his impact at Arsenal and the way they are marching towards the Premier League title.
They were very, very good in this first half, though. Like, genuinely, they were great. Fulham, Marco Silva said that they were too soft after the game. I think he's completely correct. No aggression whatsoever. They had a clever... Not clever. Well, yeah, maybe it was. The blocking system at the start of the pitch. High up the pitch.
Yes.
Fulham were there. So, you know that Arsenal want to become the back three, then a two, with Zinchenko helping out Partey there. And so, to stop them being able to build up from the very start of the game, Fulham came out and the 4-3-1 became basically there was a front two who were blocking the pass into the two, and then there were three surrounding those players. So, Arsenal couldn't play through that middle two. And this worked really well for about 2.5 minutes. And then after 3 minutes, Arteta or Xhaka just realised if you just pull out wide to the left back position, because the wingers would normally be able to receive a pass wide because they're free, Martinelli and Saka are free, and the wider area, see at that angle, they're man marked by the two fullbacks. So Xhaka just pulled out, and then they've got the pass on, then he turned it through, Trossard drops in to receive the ball, and then that was that fixed. But then what you had was a lack of aggression, getting tight to Arsenal, trying to stop them early, and they almost just watched them play through them. Arsenal, they were playing like 3 leagues above them. They were so much better. Anthony Robinson, guilty of just terrible defending at 2 crosses specifically. I can't talk today. Too much coffee for me, Michael.
Well, you shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
I've had no coffee.
You've had none?
I'm absolutely fine. That's not true.
How much have you had?
It's a good healthy 2 cups.
That's
I'm buzzing.
okay. That's good. Yeah. So anyway, that was that. And then Fulham came out the second half and were a lot better. But yeah, Trossard's assists. One was a corner. And I think Gabriel managed to get free of his man. Probably shouldn't be able to do that. There was a little block on. They managed to get him free to be able to hit the ball down. And then Trossard had a clipped cross to the back post, but Robinson should definitely have at least put a challenge in on Martinelli. And then the third one was a cross that just got ahead of Robinson, I think, jumping for it, and it missed him. I think it was Robinson. Might not have been. Me harsh on him.
And that was that.
That was that.
Just to make the point, you've had coffee from your cafetiere.
Yeah, I've had loads.
Did you found it?
Yeah. So now I'm drinking all the coffee I can.
Until someone else nicked
Until
it?
time runs out.
Did you find out who nicked it?
No.
Oh.
It doesn't matter.
It sounded like you did.
If someone else would
matter.
have used... No, someone else would have... It doesn't... This is not a story for now. It's too interesting.
Can we keep it for the outtakes at the end? Good work. Anyway, what was I saying? Or what were you saying, JJ? Arsenal marching towards their Premier League title. I'm not sure if we're supposed to be talking about Fulham, actually. But Arsenal won. That was great. And Leo Trossard, loads of assists. Fulham running out of steam a bit. John?
I mean, running out of steam, maybe.
Yes or no will do.
Well, The underlying numbers.
Michael's coming so hot. This is great.
Fulham have been running a little bit rich this season, according to the underlying numbers, which I don't think... I mean, it doesn't matter that much, right? Because who cares? You overperform your underlying numbers. You end up in the top half of the table in a season when your goal is to not go down, right? Is it sustainable? Probably not, but who cares? Because over the course of the first half of the season, they've got themselves into a really nice position to stay up, and that's what they want to do. So I think that there's a few things going on in terms of like they're probably regressing to a mean a little bit. I think a lot of teams are probably, well, the team in the Premier League, it's a brutal league. So you play half a season, and then all of the analysts of all of the other clubs have plenty of data and tape to look at and be like, this is where this team's weaknesses are.
They put you off as well, though, don't they? Like Marco Silva's already been linked with here, there, or everywhere. Paulinho is such a great player.
Going to Manchester United,
can he stay for another season? Probably not, because the proper teams, are gonna just sort of take him, and then what do you do?
Yeah, and I think that's the big question with Fulham is you've stayed up this season. Now the question is, what do you do over the summer to approach the next season? Because I think there's a lot of teams who do well in their first season in the Premier League, and they assume, the Premier League's easy. We've solved that problem. Now it's a case of just kicking on. And the Premier League has a funny way of biting you in the arse when you have that approach. I can say that as a Leeds fan because we finished 9th in the Premier League and we were like, the Premier League's pretty easy, isn't it?
Do you mean specifically the word arse?
Yeah, that's right.
I will allow it. At least you finished 9th, Norwich.
Yeah. So, and that's the big question, right? What do they do in the summer? Like they can't expect to have this sort of level of overperformance again next season. So they're going to have to change something, and the question is like, what gives? Which of the players you're going to bring in? You're going to change your tactical system up in any way? Like I say, everyone in the Premier League has the analysts to be able to just dissect your game and cause you problems in the second half of the season when they see what you're doing in the first half of the season. So you have to constantly innovate. You have to constantly think of what's the next thing that you're going to do. You have to, when you're a team like Fulham, as you say, you have to be aware of the fact that if you've done well, then there will be other teams looking at your players, your manager, etc. So you have to have all of these plans in place. So, yeah, for Fulham, they've run a little bit hot, but who cares? As long as you've got the long-term plan.
I like that you used the word that they were running rich. I like the idea of running rich and poor over Hong Kong.
It's a
sort of bringing class
car thing, isn't it? It's like if you're running a little bit rich.
F1.
Running rich is a bad thing, though, because when you're running rich, it means that you're burning more fuel than is efficient. Yeah, so I should be saying they're running lean. I don't know.
They drain on society.
It's a bad idiom.
Fulham are a football's drain on society. They do deserve huge praise for the recruitment job they did in the summer and how it took what was obviously an incredible Championship football team into a very good Premier League football team, and that is Paulinho the epitome of that, isn't he, JJ? He's a lovely footballer, and he probably won't be there next season.
Well, you can see in his absence what difference having one amazing player in a team like Fulham makes. So, like, Mitrovic is a hugely important player. He's Serbia's all-time top scorer. He's still quite young. He's like 28, isn't he? I think something like that.
He doesn't look that.
No, is he 28? Maybe even be younger than that. I'm just trying to work it out.
How old would you say he looks, John?
Who are we talking about? Sorry,
Mitrovic. Keep up.
Oh yeah, he looks very old.
Excellent.
He's 28. I'm dead right. Yes.
Wow.
So, but Paulinho, signed from Sporting for a bit of money. He puts up numbers that are very similar to N'Golo Conte in that loads of interceptions, loads of tackles, but he's just a very good footballer, really good in the ball, but reads things superbly out of possession so he can clear up loads of gaps. And those players, I think, are really important in any team. Like, you saw the difference that Casemiro's one for Man United. They needed a player like that for ages. He comes in, does that sort of job. And when like Chelsea, when they had Makalele there, they put him in, reads all the things that are going on around him and makes things better. Like Kante's one of the best that's done it in the Premier League. He's so good at that in a different way to those players I just mentioned. But Paulinho, really important to them. When he's not there, you can see they lack the aggression in midfield. They're trying to replace him with a couple of players who weren't able to do the same sort of job, even when they've got two in the same sort of position for Fulham. And they'll be better when he's in there. Any team's better when they have their best players, and Fulham only have a few really individually great ones. So though Lukic is probably a fine player, he's not anywhere near as good as Paulinho is, but Fulham got lucky with that, and to the point he'll then move on to somewhere else. I remember when Didi Hamann went to Newcastle, he was amazing at Newcastle, and he was only there for like one season at most. Was it even a few months?
Sounds right.
He went to Liverpool straight after. I remember that being a thing. Just when these players come in and they're excellent. When Alden at Newcastle came in, was so good, and then straight away picked off going to Liverpool.
But then some of them can't make that transition to a bigger club and a bigger environment.
Yeah.
Can they? I think Kabay was it? Who was?
Johan Kabay, yeah.
He's
I've not thought of him for ages. He would win the footballer game, definitely.
Which one?
I haven't thought. There's a game I play with my friends where we text each other a footballer that you haven't thought of for years, and if everyone knows who that player is, and they agree, I haven't thought about him for years, Kabay would definitely win.
I've forgotten his first name.
I'm going to play that game
for
after.
so long. Yeah. Johan. But where was he? Did he rock up at Newcastle?
Yeah, he played for Palace.
He went to Palace.
And then Palace. He was amazing when he broke through.
He was very good when he came in,
can't remember. But yeah, that element of maybe stepping up into a bigger club is harder than, again, being a big fish in a small pond. Sorry, Fulham. Sorry. Anyway, is that a point? Was that a question?
Yeah.
Do you want to turn it into a question? Fulham?
Yeah, so Marco Silva, people will remember him from being at Everton when he didn't do particularly spectacularly well, is what I'm trying to say. Not spectacularly, it's not a word. But everyone has a trouble at Everton. No one really gets above a certain win percentage apart from Carlo Ancelotti. I don't even know if he's remembered particularly fondly. How good is him?
He managed. Can I just say he managed Everton?
Yeah.
I do find that really
It's
weird.
crazy, yeah.
The easiest game that we had in the Premier League at Leeds was against Carlo Ancelotti.
Could he not be bothered? Or
they were just awful, absolutely terrible.
couldn't be bothered. It says here, John has a stat on Fulham being bottom of expected goals, XG. Are they running poor?
I mean, this is what
Do you
I was
have the
alluding
stat to
to.
hand, John? Sorry.
I'll
Threw it at
pull
you.
up the table, but
Thanks.
according to FB Ref, when I last checked, let me see, it's probably still the same because they've just lost to Arsenal. Yeah, they are bottom of
I don't think they've played since.
They are bottom of the expected goals against table according to FB Ref, so they've conceded the most expected goals in the course of the season with 42.7, which puts them just below Everton on 42.6. But yeah, so
Optus is their fourth worst.
okay.
So, same thing.
Point holds. Point holds.
Yeah, I mean, not very good in terms of defensive numbers, but I think what a lot of people have said about Fulham is that their defensive aspect is probably one of their strengths. I definitely think that in terms of, like, they're very well drilled in terms of their pressing. They have very good, it's called variable pressing, so they know when to push and when to drop and when to go more aggressive and when to hold back a little bit. But this is what I was saying before. Like, if you look at a lot of the numbers, it's not particularly impressive, but who cares? You've got a summer to get through now. You've got a time to work on the things that you think you can improve on and come back next season and iron a lot of this stuff out and then hope to be even better next season.
And you had like two key players of the same. I mean, everyone's looking for like a Paulinho level of player to come in, and if they lose him, obviously they need to replace that as well. But then that's how you develop and keep going and going and going.
And also, they could be playing European football like next season if they hold on to this momentum.
I have a feeling the Fulham bubble may have burst a little bit and they'll drop.
I think European football will probably not be good for them at this point as well.
But what I mean, I suppose, is that it would be easier to possibly keep hold of Paulinho and maybe easier to then recruit if you can say, look, we're playing in the Conference League. Is that how it works? Would a player go, Conference League? Yes, I'll play that.
Depends who came in for him. I suspect not. But I think the interesting thing about Fulham is if you actually look across that squad, like, there's a lot of players that they've got there who are playing for them in the Championship, and they've done a really good job of making that step up without having to break the bank on anyone. So yeah, again, I'm sounding like a bit of a broken record, but like, you take these things when they happen and you say, you know, we've stayed in the Premier League with a minimal investment in the squad. Now we've stayed up. If they finish in the top half, that's a decent chunk of extra money for the positions that they would have expected to finish in the beginning of the season. And so you just take that. You think, where are the areas where we can improve our squad? And I think there's lots of areas where they can improve their squad. So I think it's pretty rosy for Fulham fans right now, I would say.
They took the Championship apart last season. The Championship level, obviously not quite what it was, he says. But they are a Championship team that got promoted and probably won't go down. I guess mathematically, Fulham can't go down now, surely.
Well, there's the magic 40-point mark, right?
What are they on?
39. So
they could still go down.
If they lose every single game going forward. Yeah.
If the bubble really does burst.
They should be fine. I think Arsenal...
They should be fine, to be clear. They will not. go down.
Arsenal made them look really bad in the first half, but it's a little bit of Silva. Another thing Silva said after the game was that they did 50% of what they needed to, and I think the way they set up, like I agree with John. I think they look really well coached for them. You can see that they have been coached and they are doing things that they've been told to, and the way they were blocking Arsenal made absolute sense. The biggest part they got wrong was in the application of just simply stopping other people going past you and stopping them from playing. And in the second half, they're a bit more aggressive. They were a lot better, but still short of where you'd expect them to be.
3-0 down.
I put the 21st group Premier League predictions, and they say Fulham less than 1% chance they're getting relegated.
Excellent news. So you're saying there's still a chance. I mean, we get into the start of the season, obviously the 3 promoted teams are going to get relegated. I am absolutely scarred by all of this, obviously, as you know. It won't be the case this year, probably, although there is still a chance, as we have ascertained. But, it does... Fulham, Bournemouth still in trouble, and then we've got other teams that maybe shouldn't be in relegation trouble. Who are? Should we, John? Do you want to talk about Leeds first? I don't know.
I think Leeds had escaped relegation on the last day last season, so I wouldn't really put them in that group. I think the interesting teams in terms of the relegation battle are particularly Leicester and West Ham. Maybe Wolves, when you consider the strength of the Wolves squad, even though in the last couple of seasons they've probably been heading that way as well.
They were more because they were poor at the start of the season, because they've been decent under Lopetegui now. So I'd imagine the only reason they're that far down is because he didn't get a longer run at it, right?
They were bottom when he took over and almost cut adrift, I think, roughly.
Yeah, they've clearly changed around under him. And I think there's been a few teams, right, where, Villa were in the same boat for a little while. They looked like they were bombing out of the Premier League, and then they did a manager change and things sorted out. Everton, I suppose, in the same sort of boat. They've had pretty good performances under Sean Dyche. Leicester and West Ham, I think, particularly stand out as two teams who have impressive squads relative to the level. But when you watch them play, just seem to be the most meh teams that you can see. It's almost like they're mid-tabling the relegation battle. They just, they're sort of like bumbling along, happy with what they're doing, and you're like, but you're a couple of points off the relegation zone, if not in it. And
Leicester's really difficult. I can't work out whether Rodgers is doing a good job or not. I can't figure it out, because we know what he can do in the past and where he's been, but he inherited a team that was really in the up. So the teams he was linked to, Leicester had a great team. So Ndidi was phenomenal at the time. Who played in midfield? It was Ndidi, Tielemans, and Maddison. That was the midfield 3 he had at the time. And then up front, Vardy, when he was still playing all the time and still very, very good. Basically, what's happened now is, through lack of investment in players, because they didn't buy anyone for quite a long time, so they've ended up with a team where you've got, Iheanacho was starting up front a lot of the time, and misses chances. He's a good player, though, I think. But the midfield, like, Ndidi is nowhere near as good as he was. Tielemans seems to have maybe not regressed, but just isn't playing well. Maybe that's a function of the team not doing very well as a whole. I think he's a team that he's good in a good team, but he maybe doesn't look very good in a bad team, which maybe all players are. But so they're missing that. The defence, I think, what they brought in, Harry Suter and Wout Fez. Fez is a half-decent player.
Yep.
Yeah, he got sent off at the weekend, didn't he? But
I didn't realise that.
He's got a bit of the old red cards in him.
But the good play, like Johnny Evans was so important back in like Evans and Vardy, hugely important to them. Evans is getting older, as all humans do.
It does happen.
Yeah,
Harvey Barnes is getting older too.
I didn't see it coming.
He's a lovely player, though, Harvey Barnes.
Harvey Barnes, I think he's a fine player. I think. I think Harvey Barnes
is. You should fight
fine
in your matching sweaters.
I know.
You didn't. Yeah,
I dressed up as Michael.
I did.
I'm sure we'll reference this in the intro.
I was just thinking. I've just reacted to that as if it's happened for the first time, which it has happened for the first time, but we haven't recorded the intro yet. So I've got to now pretend that was obviously a really funny joke.
Tell them what's in this. What's the idiom? How the soup's made.
How we bend time.
What you put in the soup. What's made in the stew.
How sausages.
Oh, sausages. That's it. Yeah.
You got soup on the brain. Soup brain. Soup brain.
My brain is full of soup on Monday morning.
Last week you actually recorded the podcast backwards. I heard, like, literally.
It was tough. Learning, we had to learning English, like all of the words backwards.
Makes sense. But at least you found your cafetiere.
Yeah. Can you tell I've had loads of coffee today?
I still haven't had any. What was I talking about?
We're talking about Leicester, but there's like a huge. We're still trying to find the guy who did that energy about Leicester, right? with Brendan Rodgers, because he sort of complains a lot about the squad.
He's wearing the hot dog suit.
Yeah, he's the guy in the hot dog suit. But like a lot, we can complain about the state of the squad, but like he has some sort of responsibility in that. I think there's obviously a lot of different factors at play with Leicester, not least the fact that their owner suffered quite a bit financially, I think, because of the pandemic. But at the same time, like he had every chance of building a decent squad that could have weathered that storm. And it feels as though every season they bring in players who then don't really break through and haven't made that jump up. So,
but then what should you expect of Leicester? Because they won the league, then they had some Champions League money, and Leicester don't have the same like financial incomings. They don't have all the marketing and everything that other big clubs do. So naturally, they would probably have to regress towards being a sort of mid-table team, which is what they've basically done. Because when you look at where they are in the league, I mean, you go down from 12th to 20th, there are 5 points separating all those teams. They're all basically equally and equally fine. That they could win one game one week and then lose the next. It's the randomness of that sort of part of that league.
It is horrible being Southampton because you just know those teams are going to do something at some point. Will Crystal Palace do something at some point? Because they're like the meme, aren't they? Where people are prodding Crystal Palace going, do something, because they're not doing anything. And I would imagine their position in the table sort of...
My friends have this joke that Palace never win and they're always 12th. They just never ever win in the Premier League.
Must
but they
be
stay
so
in the same
dull
position.
being a Palace fan.
Very few goals when they play at the moment.
They've got some lovely players. That's my favourite word of the day. Lovely.
Who do you like of the Palace squad?
Did we have this conversation last time I was on the pod? Or I can't remember now.
We had it before the podcast started. Yeah.
But you weren't,
Michael Elise.
You weren't in the room when we had that conversation.
Okay.
We had a long conversation about the players that we liked. But yeah, Michael Elise was on the list. So well done. Next. Come on. Your mind has gone completely blank now of all Palace.
Patrick Vieira's the head coach, isn't he?
He doesn't play anymore, yeah.
Mark Gay, nice exciting centre back.
Yes, indeed.
Czech Decore, well spoken of.
Tyreek Mitchell's meant to be quite highly
Tyreek
rated.
Mitchell, yeah. Wilfried Zaha.
Wilfried Zaha.
You a fan?
He's older than Mitrovic.
Iberieze.
Yeah, I said him.
Yeah.
I forgot his first name, but I did that with Cabaye as well.
Odson Edouard.
I like him. No one cares though. That's a relegation battle. So yeah, so Palace will be fine. That's what we just said.
I'm not sure Palace will be fine. I think
okay.
So very little action goes on. I think listening to Palace fans, reading what people said in the Slack is that there's very little movement in the midfield at Crystal Palace. People just stand still. And I can't remember. I looked into Vieira's last team he managed. Who was it?
Nice,
right? And I seem to remember them not being that bad.
Yeah.
They were quite good.
They were good at the start, and then they tailed off, which
Right.
is history repeating.
Well, there we go.
Let's just say that.
Palace's squad is fine, but there's lots of good teams in that bottom 8, basically. You see Everton have some good players. You see Leicester have some good players. But like Harvey Barnes is a good example. On his day, Harvey Barnes is a really good player, but you wouldn't put him in the Man United team. You wouldn't put him in the Liverpool team, I don't think. I don't think they'd get in.
Steal a car.
If I could download Harvey Barnes, would I? What would I do with him?
He's fine. I think he's a lovely player.
Oh yeah, I'm trying to keep us on Crystal Palace a bit.
XL, expected lovely.
Yes, I think Palace are...
I mean, they're 3 points off. And this is the thing, right?
I think they'll be in trouble.
This is maybe a really banal thing to say, but whoever goes down this season is going to be whoever is in the bottom 3 at the end of the season.
I think we need to stop talking about this now.
My point being that, anything could happen, right?
It's true, John.
Any of these teams could go down, and
over 90
it's
minutes.
almost impossible to say. But
there's another
Who
one.
wants it more?
I think also we
definitely did that last time.
Clearly, all of these teams have enough good players to get out of the relegation battle,
including Leeds.
What you need to do. Throwing Leeds at me like that.
Well, they're in the relegation.
They are
battle,
definitely.
or are they not?
They definitely are
relegated them.
I mean, they are 19th right now, so they're definitely in a relegation battle. Whatever Jesse Marsh might like to tell you, but I think what we've seen is that a lot of these teams have enough players that if you change the manager, bring in a solid structure for your good players, and then rely on those good players to have moments, you can climb out of the morass. So we've already talked about Aston Villa in that situation. Everton seem to be doing it. Wolves have done it under Lopetegui pretty much, even though they're still there and thereabouts.
West Ham not doing it.
West Ham not doing it, and Leicester City not doing it. And that's what makes them so confusing, because it feels like they both have managers who people in the past have said these are good managers. They have squads that they probably have enough to be able to get out of this, and they're not doing it. And that's the big...
And the weird thing is that all those managers, right, elite level managers, they're all, well, Premier League level, all these managers, right? So you say that it's the elite. They'll all be setting up the team the way exactly they should be. They'll have analysts, they're reading the reports, they're getting the things set up, they're working out strengths and weaknesses of both them and their opponents. All the preparation is done, the training is done, they've got their squads, and then they'll do all the preparation that a manager should have. Some have more charisma than others, some will know how to motivate certain players, but there'll be other things going on in the sidelines. And then someone scores a rocket from 40 yards, and then Leeds win 1-0, and then suddenly Gracia's a brilliant manager because he's kept them up because some lad had a punt from 40 yards. Like, football's weird. Well, and they judge people's entire careers based on things they have no control over.
Yeah. Villa stayed up because no one turned on the Hawkeye during Project Restart. And then what would that have all looked like? Who knows?
Leeds stayed up last season because Brentford had their Christmas party a couple of days before the last game of the season.
Well organised. Yeah. I want to say that Bournemouth will get relegated. Sorry, Bournemouth people.
You want to say it?
Why as in I feel it will happen, not because I have a desperation for it to happen.
You don't like Bournemouth.
It's just, the nuance of the statement.
This podcast is like a caffeinated nightmare.
But I don't know if they will, because AFC Bournemouth 1-0 Liverpool, which off the back of the 9-0 defeat at Anfield for Bournemouth and the 7-0 thrashing of Manchester United for Liverpool. Everyone knows all this, but it's still fun to say. Bournemouth beat them.
So this means that Bournemouth are better than Manchester United, right? That's how it works. That's the logic.
That's exactly it. In the same way, there's that World Cup competition where the team who beats the last one.
Who's top of that? Do you know?
I don't know. It's probably like... I don't know.
Should football work like that? Like, just forget the league tables.
Winner stays on.
Just keep going.
See, it's not a bad idea.
Royal Rumble for the World Cup. Yeah. So you start off with like the World Cup winner, and then you work your way up through the rankings. So you have to play, I don't know, Fiji, and then you have to knock them out, and then you just...
Well, winner stays on is basically what the Cup Winners' Cup was, and why we should bring it back. Because you have to win the cup to get into it. So then the winner stays on. Then they have all knockouts. There's no league tables. And then the winner stays on. That's why they should have it.
I think it's a brilliant idea. You could do it for like, next Premier League anniversary. Scrap the fixture.
Well, there's all chat just now about the European football changing because they want to try and develop it. All people in charge of UEFA and whatever else is going on, and maybe appeal to different markets and bring in new revenue streams from places. And the argument being that places like Arsenal, for example, not all the fans live in Islington. They often live around the entire world. So why would they be any less of a fan than someone who lives geographically closer to where the club is? It's more of a globalized entity now. So if you bring the competition elsewhere, then maybe that's the thing you do. So, Cup Winners' Cup.
Keep going.
I've got a solution to the problem of the two domestic cups, right? So we don't need the FA Cup and the League Cup. So get rid of the League Cup. But we keep it in the sense that whoever wins the League Cup then is put into a ballot against one of the other Premier League sides. And then you do winner stays on until you've played all of the other Premier League sides. And then you start again the next season with the person who won the cup. That'd be fun, wouldn't it?
I don't get it.
You're just playing much fewer games. So Arsenal win the League Cup last season, right? This season, you have a ballot of 19 teams who can face Arsenal. And you pull out a name and it's Southampton. And Southampton lose to Arsenal, so they're out. And then you have a ballot of 18 teams. And then you pull it out and it's Newcastle. And they beat Arsenal and now Newcastle are in.
But no one ever wins
17
it
teams
outright.
Yeah, the team at the end.
But Arsenal could win like 19 games.
And then lose
the last game.
Yeah.
It's quite funny.
Winner stays on.
But like it's much fewer games than the League Cup requires currently. So
then all the Premier League teams will vote for it.
Yeah.
That's how it works. I feel like this is another part of your mandate, JJ, to play
fewer football.
Let's just...
Oh no, well I was talking about a bit in The Athletic about talking about the European football thing. There was never a point I was making, but as evidenced by what's going on in this podcast so far, I just forgot what I was talking about halfway through and started going off another tangent about other things.
Let's keep on the Bournemouth theme.
Oh yes, Bournemouth, yes.
Are they actually... I don't want them to go down. I love Bournemouth. It's a beautiful place. It's a lovely hotel near the ground. I went to once. Near the beach. It was near the beach. It was a lovely walk.
There's one hotel?
Yeah, I can't remember it. What it was. Marriott? I should stop just listening.
Marriott?
Hotel.
Premier.
How long do you know it?
Staying. I was just visiting. What was I saying?
Gary O'Neill is doing
a
quietly decent job at Bournemouth.
I don't want them to go down, but I felt like they always were going to go down, and now I'm not so sure.
Well, they came up with Scott
JJ.
Parker, right? So he took them up. Things haven't gone well for Scott Parker since. He's fired last week, wasn't he, from that
Club
team
Brugge.
that he managed. Club Brugge, that's the one. Thank you.
Brugge. Not Bruges?
Brugge.
Well, yeah,
Brugge.
so it depends if you're speaking Flemishly or not.
Which is which?
Bruges is French. And Brugge
Brugge
is
Flemish.
Flemish.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
And I thought Bournemouth were decent against Liverpool in this game. Liverpool were particularly poor. They played with that same lack of intensity that they seemed to randomly. They were
every other week.
Obviously, they were very good against Manchester United, but that was helped by things like John did a video on Tifo IRL, which is, I think, the best way of understanding what on earth happened with that game, and the man-marking system that just got torn apart, and then players not tracking their runs, and it all falls apart very easily. But Bournemouth here just managed to get at Liverpool. Again, they had less possession. They keep doing well against bigger teams. They played against Arsenal the week before. Same thing, hardly any possession of the ball, because they know where they can block, where the most likely places they're going to concede from are. They know their limitations. That's one of the things I think O'Neill's got right. He knows his team isn't that strong, so he works out a way to win based on the strength they do have, which is often pace on the counter-attack. And you see that Liverpool's back four, who have been all over the place this season, there's this thing they keep doing this season where the back four becomes a back three, but it's not a traditional back three where you have a fullback joining two centre-backs. It's one centre-back in the middle of two fullbacks who are wide, because the centre-back is pushed into midfield to try and help win the ball. If it's launched in the air towards that part of the pitch, they play a high line. Like Karate, for one of the goals, I think Karate pushes up into midfield to try and win the header, then Van Dijk pushes up. So your back four is actually a back two, but the back two are two fullbacks wide. There's a massive hole through the middle, and then players can run through it in the middle. And you saw they had a few counter-attacks very early on in the game where Bournemouth were getting through the middle of the pitch, middle of Liverpool's defence. It should never happen. It can happen once, actually, and then it shouldn't happen again, but it kept happening. And the odd thing about it as well for me is that Jurgen Klopp, you'd think a lot of the time he'd just be like raging and screaming at his players and howling at them, but he just looked like he was kind of having a nice old time and laughing. It doesn't really matter. I guess it's how he's trying to motivate the players differently, like shouting at them doesn't work every single week.
Not bothering.
Well, I don't know, it's either that he's just trying to manage, right? So if you scream at people, they'll respond for a certain amount of time. He'll have praised them after the 7-0 last week, so you can't suddenly go like, you're useless having just beaten Man United 7-0. It doesn't make sense. It wouldn't make sense coherently over the course of a season to do that to your players. So I wonder if that's part of his thinking, and then going, being a bit more gentle. But yeah, then like he hooked Alexander-Arnold for a certain time, put James Milner on again, and then I mean, I haven't seen his post-match stuff, Klopp, but I'd imagine he just goes, it's just one of those like that. But Gary O'Neill, to be able to get results like that, they were close to beating Arsenal, and this fell apart in the final bit of the game. They did get done by City, but everyone gets done by City. And then to beat Liverpool, that's really impressive.
The point is, they're still in with a chance of survival, and I think that's really
absolutely,
impressive.
Yeah. Like they beat Wolves a few weeks ago. Yeah. It was tight against Brighton. Got a draw with Nottingham Forest. Like they're not. That's the thing. Like Bournemouth have limitations, and I think the manager knows it, and they play off their strengths instead, which is obviously what you should do as a manager. That's what a good manager should do. If they go down, it's not because Gary O'Neill hasn't done a good job with them.
I think it's interesting that they've had 2 games against, top 6 sides. I mean, I don't know how we're defining Liverpool as top 6, but like big six sides, and they've played this really consistent and patient low block into counter attack, and they've generated some really good chances. So I pointed out, I think at half time in this game, so Bournemouth had just played Arsenal for a full game and then half of a game against Liverpool, and they'd had 6 shots and they generated something like 2.1 expected goals, which means that on average they're generating like 0.35 XG per chance, which is just, it's nuts. Like, so they're not generating a huge amount of chances, but they are generating good chances when they're doing that. The big question is going to be, and this is almost like the issue that we had with Leeds at the beginning of the season, is that we were coming out of these kind of games having caused problems to the big 6 sides, and sometimes you win, sometimes you don't. When you come up against the teams who you need to be beating consistently, that approach doesn't really work, because teams further down the table have different play styles and they have ways of solving these sorts of problems. And both Arsenal and Liverpool are going to commit quite aggressively in terms of their attacking play. They're going to force as many players forward as possible, and they're going to try and structure their rest defence so that they're not going to have problems from that. Now, Bournemouth have been very good at manipulating that when they played these two teams. But when they play against Everton in a few weeks' time, I don't know if they're playing against Everton just before the comments go mad, and I'm biased against Everton or Bournemouth or someone.
Next team stays on.
Yeah, next team stays on. But when they do that, Everton aren't going to commit all of their players forwards in those situations. They're going to be much more conservative. And so they're not going to be able to have this upside. So the interesting thing for me about Bournemouth is going to be, how do they take these sorts of great results and performances against teams like Arsenal and Liverpool and match up against the Nottingham Forests and the West Hams when they have to get points from those kind of games?
Someone's going to have to go down. 3 teams, in fact, are going to have to go down. Producer Steve, has sent some notes about caffeinated drinks, which I actually find quite rude. So I'm not going to read it out. But he does say, for the music video, The Scientist, Coldplay's Chris Martin learnt the lyrics backwards so he could record the video, which was then, of course, played forwards.
Yeah.
In reverse. So you get it.
Yep.
Is Chris Martin the
Bristol City Norwich striker?
Legend? Yeah.
Yes. My brother-in-law as well. They're not all the same person. It's just a really common name.
Your brother-in-law is Chris Martin.
Yeah.
From
but
Coldplay.
not the Chris Martin.
Not the Chris Martin.
Or the Chris Martin.
The Chris Martin.
Okay, right.
Amazing, hey? Just like how some people have the same name.
Yeah,
but they're not actually
incredibly
the same
generic
person.
names, and there's more than one of them. Yeah,
I bet they share similarities. I bet there's something to do with like nominative determinism and the way that you act based on what your name is. Like if I'm called JJ, right? I didn't choose that. I got given that when I was born. But if I'd been called Joe the whole time, I'd be a different person. I bet.
Would you though?
I bet so.
If I've got a slight issue is that if you, I'm not suggesting anyone does. Search the name Michael Bailey. There's a very famous American someone or other. I don't know what they do, but just don't Google it. But they have the same name as me. I'm supposed to differentiate. I put like Norwich as my middle name or something.
Do you know?
You come up first on my Google.
When I was
JJ.
When I was growing up,
good.
I was known to my friends and family as JJ also. And then
No way.
It disappeared around the age of about 7 or 8.
What?
But there's no reason for that because, like, you're called JJ because you have 2 names that begin with J, right?
Yeah.
Whereas my name is John, and that's it. And my middle name does not begin with J. So
Absolute scenes.
John. Weird.
Well, I think that is definitely time for us all to think about our names, and to do that, we should probably facilitate you with a break. There we go. That was a break. Hope we all thought about our names there.
Yeah, I'm going to call you Mike.
I don't care. That's fine.
Do people call you Mike?
Yeah, well, it's JJ calls me Mike. Some people just sort of impose on you their view. Like, right, Mickey?
So
Probably,
people think that they know you well enough to then just be able to shorten your name.
But that happens with anyone, doesn't it? That's more about the person saying it, isn't it?
People have shortened my name from Joseph to Joe often, yeah. In an official capacity, when I'd be like called Joseph, like in a karate class or something like that.
Oh, is that an official capacity? In what scenario are they saying? Is that with instructional? The official? What?
This is official karate class, isn't it?
Yeah.
Look, we do a dangerous job. We have to have protection. So
exactly, that's why I did it.
This is official.
I knew the life of a podcaster was tough, so I trained.
This is official security training, and they were
comments.
Like, do we have a Joseph here? He's like, okay if I call you Joe. That's what happened, right?
I think I was like blue belt or something like that.
Is that good?
Sure. Don't know. My sister was better at it. They kept moving her up 2 classes at a time. It was annoying.
Right.
Jadon Sancho is number 10.
Thanks, JJ. Yeah. As a number 10. He plays as a number 10. This was, of course, Manchester United 0-0 Southampton. I didn't see any of this. So Jadon Sancho, I keep saying Sancho, and I don't know why, because that's not his name. Maybe he'd have been a different footballer if he'd been called Sancho. I didn't want to say better, because that would be rude.
A design agency, Sancho. Oh, Sachi.
As a number 10, I mean, it's just a slight nuance on a position in the forward ranks.
Do any positions matter now?
Does it? It's just, is it not about the fluidity rather than which position you're given? And
yeah, well, there's a thing Ten Hag's been doing with his players recently. He's playing some of his key players in positions you would not expect them to be in.
Is that good?
Well, it has. It's interesting to me because a lot of people will look at a footballer and think that's how they're going to play because that's what they look like. Wout Weghorst is a big, tall lad, therefore he is a target man striker, number 9. But he's actually quite good with his feet.
Like Ewan Roberts.
Yes. And so Weghorst has been playing behind a forward, Rashford, because it gives you certain advantages. Rashford can play in behind a high line, which is easier, whereas Weghorst cannot. But Weghorst can take a ball down on the chest that's very high up in the air and then give you a way to get out from the back easier, especially if the guy kicking the ball from the back is David De Gea, who you should not put under any sort of duress in a passing situation. So then that makes you gets an advantage out of De Gea. It means Weghorst is serving a very functional, useful point. It means when you get into the final third, you've got Rashford. You can play obviously in the penalty area to get poachers' goals, but also you can play in behind a high line. But also Weghorst is there to give some muscle to any crosses put in from wide, set pieces as well. Very useful. Then you've got Jadon Sancho, who's currently playing. Well, he started this game against Southampton as playing as one of almost 2 10s because Bruno Fernandes we know is always like a 10, but he's been playing left wing and right wing in recent games. Sancho has... So look at Sancho, right? So you think because of what he's done in the past, he is a winger or a wide forward. That's what you think of him. Borussia Dortmund, I think he was mostly on the right wing in Borussia Dortmund. He played on the left as well.
Yeah, he played on both sides. I think he played more on the left.
But there was a discussion over which side he was more effective of rather than central.
And I think we worked out with stats that he tends to be more successful off of the left, which makes sense because he's a right footer, so he's an inverted winger or an inside forward that comes in off that wing. Obviously, Rashford wants to play that wing, so he put one on the right. Then he brought Anthony in, so where does he go? And if you think about how Jadon Sancho plays, very neat and tidy, very clever player, good in tight spaces, the kind of player that is useful in that situation is, it's like a player like David Silva. You put him in the little pockets and the holes between enemy lines and high up the pitch, and Sancho can do those sorts of things. He's quick, but he's not so fast he can run past fullbacks, especially in the Premier League. So you put him out wide, mostly he has to go back and it starts horseshoeing around. So you take him out of that situation, put him in as number 10, he can drift in and around, then you get a positional rotation with him and Anthony. That was happening a lot. You get him with Bruno Fernandes, you could even swap around with Rashford, so you get lots of fluidity in the final third, which is good because it gives you unpredictability, very important, especially when you're building in similar sorts of ways most of the time. And so then you just get more out of a player like that, and you're not wasting a player just being a sub who comes on, then can't get the form, and you've got £75 million of talent sitting on the bench doing nothing.
I think a lot of people thought that Sancho was going to be a good dribbler because he played out wide for Dortmund, but I think, as JJ says, his skill set is best appreciated when you can get players around him. And part of the problem with Manchester United early on in his time there was that over on the left, they just weren't able to get enough players around him to make him functional, to play those sort of creative passes which can get players in behind. Obviously, Marcus Rashford plays that left berth really nicely as well. Gives you the angle to run in behind if you're playing Weghorst as a 9. And so I think a lot of this just comes down to the fact that, as you're saying, Ten Hag is thinking about ways to get more out of Sancho's skill set in his system, which is what he's been doing with all of these players, right? When he drops about Weghorst deeper, I think there's an element as well to which it comes down to his out of possession stuff as well. I've got a quote from Ten Hag from the weekend on starting Sancho, and he said, "I think at number 10 we need a strong press. You need quick feet in the midfield. You need a player there who can create, who can run in behind, which Jadon can do." I think it's really interesting, that quote, because he starts off by talking about the pressing of his number 10. That's the first thing he says. You need a strong presser, and we've seen that happening in games where Manchester United are maybe at parity or maybe slightly worse than the team that they're playing. We've seen him play Weghorst as a 10, and I think because Weghorst is pretty good out of possession, and so for example against Liverpool we saw Casemiro, Fred and Weghorst in that midfield. They were doing a really tight marking on the Liverpool midfield 3. So there's certain games where Ten Hag is going to want a player who is going to be good in terms of the out of possession stuff. And I think in this game, it's a game against Southampton, right? So you start with was it Bruno and Sancho as like those two higher players there?
Yeah, I think it was like a 4-1-4-1 with the almost 2 sections, defence and attack, essentially.
Yeah, and that makes sense. But this is what Ten Hag is doing in each game. He's thinking, right, what do I want from each of my players in each position? Who suits those roles best? And the ability to have the fluidity to be able to, for example, in some games start Bruno Fernandes as an out-and-out 10, have him finding that pocket of space where he can do his creative passing. And then in other games where he's like, I feel as though we're going to get overrun in the midfield, you can move Bruno across wide, you can put Rashford up front for runs in behind, and then you can drop Weghorst to be a little bit more solid in the central area as well. So I think all of this sort of comes down to the fact that Ten Hag has a very clear idea about how he wants his teams to set up against various oppositions, and he has a very clear idea about the roles that each one of his players can play and how he's going to get the best out of them in each of those systems. So.
The running behind bit's interesting as well, because I think he likes a lot of these counter movements, like vertical counter movements, where the striker will drop and then the two will run in behind. And Fernandes tends not to do that, right? He tends to sit in just behind them and shoot from 25 yards rather than get into the box to finish off a move. So then you want to have players running in behind to be able to finish off that if the striker drops, and you get those different uses of space.
Yeah, we had an illustrated video out last week on Marcus Rashford where we talked about how Erik Ten Hag is trying to generate these artificial transitional moments, because usually when you generate transitions, you have to do it through a turnover of possession. So you'll sit deep, you'll absorb pressure, and then try and win the ball back and then counter-attack at speed. And the reason you want to do that is because we just talked about Bournemouth, right? The opposition, the structure is compromised. There's a lot of space to attack, and you're going to be more likely to score from those sorts of situations. But what Ten Hag is wanting to do is he's wanting to generate those same kind of conditions where the opposition is open, but without having to give them possession of the ball and turn it over. So a lot of what they're doing structurally is trying to fashion those moments with the ball so that they can get basically Marcus Rashford in behind, because he's not only really good at making those runs, but his shooting is incredible. Like, he's one of the best players for getting the ball away quickly in those sorts of scenarios as well. So,
which all sounds wonderful. None of it worked on Saturday, presumably, or was it all Casemiro's fault? That unreliable midfielder who's now been sent off twice in.
I thought United were better with 10 men.
Not exactly.
There you go. I love Casemiro. I think he's a great player.
Unbelievable. Never rated him.
I mean,
I'm joking.
I think it's a clear red card, but I thought Southampton were very good in this game. They're a lot better than I remember seeing them earlier in the season. I've not watched enough of them week in, week out to really go into it, but they just look better in this game than I've seen them when I have seen them play over the season. They had a bit of creativity. They had lots of like speed in different places you want it, and they just looked well drilled, which is important. And then United, something was kind of off, not quite there. They were better with 10. They maybe just had more energy about them. I think at 10 men, the wide players especially realised they had to do loads more defensive work, and so they played as more of a unit. I think that's probably what it was. Well, this is the problem, right? If you just get done 7-0 and you come out the next game and you're not doing all that hard work from the very start anyway, that's a bit of a one for 10. 10 Hag might have seen that and not like that. But.
Is it because they won a major trophy? Maybe it's all unravelled since then.
Yes.
Excellent. Good. We did that. Steve wants me to clarify that I mentioned Ewan Roberts. He is the former Wales and Norwich City legend from the late 90s. I don't know why I need to clarify that, but apparently I do need to clarify that. Shall we move on to the Europa League and the Champions League? Because they're taking place this week. This is like a preview section.
Yeah.
Is it? That's exciting. So who wants to speak about which game first? Anyone want to? Napoli are great.
We haven't really talked about who we think are the favourites now.
Napoli are great.
Do you think Napoli can win it?
Yes, because they're still in it. That's generally a good starting point. I love them, but they haven't been in this situation before. And as we know, look at you looking at me as if I need to answer a question. If you've not won the Champions League for a long time, do you then have the mental capacity to deal with that situation and win it? Because that's why Manchester City still haven't won it, because they've not won it.
Oh, I understand, like the Andy Murray tennis thing.
Yes.
Like once Andy Murray breaks through that hurdle.
You've got to break through the hurdle of winning it to be able to win it.
This is a real...
Napoli won it.
It's like a real sporting theory though, isn't it? Is that you have to break through that thing to be able to then break it for so long that no one was able to get win Wimbledon, and then Andy did it.
But they're the best team in Europe right now, aren't they?
Napoli?
Yeah.
One of them?
If they were all playing off, winner stays on, Napoli would still be on.
They lost the other week.
Oh,
they'd be
whatever.
Off. Who did they lose to?
Everyone loses sometimes.
Lazio. So Lazio are the best team in Europe now, right?
Yes.
Unless they lost recently.
Probably.
Benfica are very good.
They're good.
They're
Who have they
good.
got? They're not still in the
They're through to the next
League.
round.
Oh, yes, this is only half the draw left over.
Yeah, who is through?
I'm well on top of this.
Sorry?
Who is through?
Benfica are through. Bayern Munich are through. They knocked out PSG.
Yeah.
And
there was another
Milan
game.
Beat Spurs.
And Chelsea knocked out Dortmund. So that's half your draw. And then we've got Real Madrid against Liverpool. Cool, that's a 5-2,
finally 5-2 aggregate
finally
so
poised
far.
Second leg. All right.
And I don't know what Liverpool turn up for this one. They seem to do very well against big teams this season, but not against Bournemouth. So
can you see them going to
4-0,
the Bernabeu and
winning 4-0?
Well, they'll miss that the stand sucking the ball in that Anfield does to them. So that would be a thing. But who knows?
Could they? No. Porto against Inter. Who knows what the first leg of that was?
It was 1-0 according to the sheet that you're looking at. You have to have very good eyes.
Am I looking at the? Oh, I can't read that. That's tiny. All I can see is 2000, which is the kickoff time. Presumably it wasn't 20-0 in the first leg.
It wasn't 20.
0-1 to Inter. I can now see that. Just.
Can you see Man City,
Inter.
Leipzig?
Yeah, I knew that was 1-1, you see, because of my in-depth football knowledge. And also, Manchester City obviously have had a lot of work to get to the point where they can win. They haven't won it, but they probably now can win it.
Yes.
So I think they'll progress. That's my logic. Have we done that bit? Is there anything else anyone wants to say on?
I think we should all do predictions who's going to win. The whole thing.
Yeah.
What?
Who's going to win the Champions League, Michael?
You
can't say Norwich.
I can't. I want Napoli to win it, and I
don't
wonder
want
if
Bournemouth to win it, do you?
Maybe I don't. I would like Bournemouth not to win it. Okay, so different parts of my body.
Come on, say Napoli.
Yeah, okay. Well, my heart says Napoli are going to win it. My head says Real Madrid are going to win it, and for some reason, the logic says Manchester City. It's their turn.
Okay. Let's all. So do
that's
that
three of them.
Yeah, let's all do that. That three. I quite like it. Who does your head say?
My head.
Wait, that wasn't one of the things.
It was heart, head, and football logic.
Football logic would dictate that either Chelsea or Liverpool would win it because they're having
Chelsea.
nightmare domestic seasons. So that just seems like a thing that would happen.
That's great shout.
Real Madrid probably will because they just do it, and Man City also should.
Yeah,
but what about your heart, JJ? What does your heart say?
I do like the Napoli team. I do like them. I don't know. I don't have a heart in any of these teams, so I don't really care.
John?
Yeah, I mean, like you both said.
Brilliant. Okay, that's right.
Real Madrid always win. But Real Madrid have a funny way of like housing their way through it. And maybe they don't in one of the legs. Maybe they just don't.
This is the year.
I'm going to have everyone mad at me because they're going to say, well, Real Madrid play a functional style of football which works for knockout tournaments. So I would just like to caveat by saying that. But I do feel as though they are at a bit of a low ebb at the moment, so maybe it won't happen. Napoli would be lovely to see.
I've just scrolled through the strip. That's not on my laptop. I've scrolled through the script, and it's got the confirmed and to be confirmed ties, which is obviously really useful about 5 minutes ago. But to be clear, Manchester City play Leipzig, Inter, Porto, Liverpool, Real Madrid, Frankfurt, Napoli. But you've got to reverse those, I think, because the second team is at home.
And I think, Bayern and City.
This isn't working,
they're also good teams.
All over the place. As a
we're all over the place.
Well, I tell you what, let's do better with the Europa League. Oh, there's even more ties. I mean, okay. So last 16, everyone's played a first leg.
I think you should just pick out the favourites.
So small, I can't read it.
Yeah, Manchester United are still in it. They battered Betis.
They knocked out Barcelona.
They're going to go through, right? Arsenal drawing 2-2 with Sporting, which is exciting because there's all to play for.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people would think that Arsenal...
Not Sporting Lisbon.
I
learned that last time.
Yeah,
Sporting CP.
That's right.
For Portugal, Club Portugal.
Obviously, Freiburg are going to decimate Juventus when Juventus come back for the home leg.
Yes, on home turf.
Europa Park Stadion. And then beyond that, Leverkusen have been quite fun. They could do it.
They're at Ferencváros and 2-0 up. So they look good.
They could score all the goals.
They've got Florian Wirtz, who's a wonderful player.
Never rule out Jose Mourinho, people used to say.
That's right, he's still in it.
Roma, yeah. Oh, so that's exciting. I've got too many numbers.
Steve's giving you the hard of sight view.
It's too late. I'll go through all of the scores, shall I, from the last round of... No one wants me to do that. Union Berlin. Union Saint-Gilloise. 3.
Union Berlin got Union Berlin by Union Saint-Gilloise. That's fun, isn't it?
Bayer Leverkusen 2-0. Ferencvárosi. Okay, anything you want to say on the Europa League, JJ?
Let's move on.
Excellent. Oh, it's a break. Well, I think we all need a break. That was a break. What have you written here, Steve?
We've got a break here. Oh no, it says before the break. I thought we had a break,
Coronation Street.
and then all of this filler stuff, and then it's like time for a break afterwards. So
I know.
You're supposed to do this before the break.
Oh yeah,
before a break in massive writing.
Oh, it does say before a break. I haven't been paying attention to anything.
Evidently,
writing.
yeah.
I would read that as though like
fairness,
before a break.
In fairness, last week, Joe was hosting, obviously, as he usually does, and he just read all of this stuff after a break. So I figured it was fine. So
You can do what you like. You're in charge.
You do whatever you want, Michael.
Yeah.
This is all staying in. Why have we got something on Coronation Street here? I haven't.
Michael Bailey is the aspiring entrepreneur, son of Ed and Aggie.
There we go. I'm sure everyone here watches Coronation Street. I did think I might have known that. Could you sort of pick up on? Anyway, anyone not know what nominative determinism is? Is that there just so I can't say it? I think it is. Time for a break. Oh no, we've just done that. FA Cup quarter-final this coming weekend. So we've had the European Cups. Now we've got the greatest cup competition of them all in football, said someone once. Probably the BBC. Are we allowed to talk about the BBC? Maybe not.
Have you ever filed a match report where you do it via like phone and just saying it?
When I first started, I covered Lowestoft Town. My first job as a sports journalist was covering Lowestoft Town, which is the most easterly club in England.
What division were they in at the time?
I don't know that. It was like lower tiers of tiers. But it was in the FA Vars. And yes, we had a Saturday evening newspaper. Oh my God, I'm so old. Saturday evening newspaper where you had a file. So I had to ring up before the game with the team news and then just sort of talk. I didn't have a laptop. There was no internet. Literally no internet, I don't think. So I rang through the report and then I had to ring through one after 10 minutes and then at half time and then 60 minutes and then 85 minutes with an intro, hoping that was how it would finish.
That sounds like a real ring cycle there, doesn't it?
It's impossible there to get it all through.
So it's sort of ghostwritten back in the day, almost. So
I'm
just wondering how people get through all the beautiful written paragraphs.
Well, the person on the phone would write it. Yeah. This just happened.
Yeah, they used to just verbatim read it out, right? And then there would be someone at the other end being like,
exactly. Which
slow down.
Imagine someone transcribing this podcast. It's impossible to write something coherent from talking. But Lowestoft actually went all the way to the FA Vars final. I've managed to watch them at Wembley.
Lost.
They did lose, to AFC Filed, as they're called now.
So who's the current winner staying on?
No.
Is it still a thing, the FA Cup vase?
Yeah. FA Cup.
No.
Other ties in the FA Cup quarterfinals as we preview the mouth-watering cup weekend. We've got Manchester United, Fulham. We should talk about Fulham. Brighton against Grimsby. Wow. I mean, that could be 10. Or could it? Is that unfair on Grimsby? Does any Grimsby fans listening? Let us know your thoughts. Grimsby had an amazing result.
Are they phoning in? How are they doing it?
What?
How are they giving you their thoughts? What are they doing?
Oh, I was just talking as if we were live. Live comments.
I see. Yeah.
But
I need to make sure you know that we're not.
Well, in the same way we record the intro at the end of the podcast, I think it's perfectly fine.
Do we need to put up a thing on the podcast now that says this was recorded in advance of you seeing this? So please do not call these numbers because you won't be able to vote for the winner of Strictly Come Dancing.
If they find the number, they deserve a medal. Sheffield United, Blackburn. What do you guys think about that one, John?
Sheffield United, Blackburn.
Yeah, they're two football clubs, north of England.
Yeah. Paul Heckingbottom's boys.
Good knowledge.
Against, is it Mick McCarthy at Blackburn?
Absolutely not, no. It's John Dale Thomason.
Oh, how's he been? Has he been all right?
They've been all right. They are the
informed team.
Fulham equivalent of the Championship, I'd say. Absolutely terrible figures, but they still seem to be in the top 6.
Okay. So who do you think is going to win that tie?
Well, Sheffield United knocked out Spurs in the last round, of course, as everyone knows, and they are second in the Championship, flying high. Could
Therefore,
well be
they're
back
better than Spurs, right?
Back in the Well, obviously by default they've knocked.
Yeah. So the big question is: are Blackburn better than Spurs? Who did Blackburn knock out?
Well, if Blackburn beat Sheffield United,
They've knocked out Southampton.
I don't know who Blackburn knocked out in the last round.
We don't know very much, do we? Considering we're a football podcast.
I've-
Anyway, things I do know: the current champions of the FA Vars are Newport Pagnell Town.
Good knowledge.
Well, I got it from Wikipedia. And the most successful club is Whitley Beer.
Where are
Four
they,
times.
John?
4 times. Where are they? In
Yeah.
Whitley, presumably.
Okay,
In Whitley Bay.
I just wasn't sure after you said it.
The bay in Whitley.
I've been to Whitley Bay. Lowestoft played Whitley Bay. They are perennial
loads.
FA Vars.
Well, they've won it 4
semi-finals.
times. They won it the
exactly.
most.
That's just what I said. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, thanks for your input. Yeah.
Have we done? Who's
it
going to
home
win the
time
FA
yet?
Cup?
You looked at, it's 13:17. That's exactly an hour
my gosh.
after the last time that you looked at the clock.
It's as if I knew.
Yeah.
Absolutely professional this week, don't you think?
I think so.
I nailed it. Really good.
Who's going to win the FA Cup?
Yeah. Who's going to win the FA Cup?
Manchester City.
Yes.
I mean, we don't know, obviously. That's
I bet United do
fun.
it. I bet United end up winning that and they win 2 cups.
cup double.
They'll call it the double.
Yeah.
They do.
The major
they do.
trophy double.
I wonder if they would.
They could do.
Manchester
good cup side?
final. Manchester final. Brighton could beat all of those teams and win an FA Cup.
Grimsby could beat all those teams and win an
Where
FA Cup.
we could just list all 8 teams really because they are still in it.
Burnley
Yeah.
could do it, yeah.
I've always wondered. I don't think any reasonable sized team has a worse record than Norwich in the FA Cup. They've never been to a final. That's like
That's pretty bad.
it's Norwich.
What's your take on Burnley coming up into the Premier League? Do you think they'll fit in like a kid glove?
I really like Vincent Kompany.
Oh, nice.
I really like him as a manager. I think he's brilliant. I think if they've got a transfer embargo, that's not going to be very helpful
But
because
apparently that's not going to last very long.
Excellent.
It's just a
they've just
short
sort of self-imposed
Yeah,
it
I think so because
between March and April.
They're wanting to make sure that they don't break the rules, so they're imposing it, and it's going to get sorted out by next month.
During
is what
a
they say.
closed part of the transfer window.
I think they're just doing things by the book.
It's literally the most pointless thing. That is literally pointless.
Have you seen Burnley in the flesh?
Yes, twice.
Yeah, both times. And you think they look good?
They were brilliant at Carrow Road, I thought, and they won 3-0. And I just think you just have to buy 4 or 5 really good players, and they play a style of football where when you get promoted, if you're trying to do it against players that are athletic and very capable of doing it themselves, then you can get found out, which is my Norwich scars coming through. But yeah, Burnley are great. There'll be lots of fun.
You did a great video about Burnley on the Tifo IRL YouTube channel. You should go and watch that.
Thanks, JJ. That's very kind. Well, yeah, Burnley will win the FA Cup then. That seems like the logical conclusion from that. And that is the bit where it says finally. So I reckon we're done. Steve's nodding gratefully. That's enough for this episode. So say our goodbyes, shall we? Thank you very much, JJ Bull.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Jon Mackenzie.
Yes.
Thank you very much to Steve and Jamie, who are in that box there, but you can't see them. Although someone might find a screen grab on
There's a great
media,
view of me saying something and Steve looking like this.
Yeah. They're going to have to start watching what they do, aren't we? Because that's...
And David Walker as well, famous for doing the Football Cliches podcast.
I think the last time, indeed, lovely man.
Poked his head through the door.
But how much do we stage? Almost like it's an art piece, like the 1975 current tour, where they have all stuff and you don't know what's going on, what's real, what's not. It's clever.
That's certainly how I feel about this podcast.
The last time I did this, Joe walked past in the window.
And he was
like,
also,
there's Joe.
And he was also in the studio at the same time.
Was he?
Under the table.
Yeah. Well, no, it's like in The Simpsons when they say that these cartoons are poorly made, they have huge errors, and then Homer walks past the window while he's also inside in the living room. But I realized I didn't really signpost that, so the setup was poor. So
I thought it still worked.
Yeah, well.
Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening, and goodbye.